What's going on, everybody? It is Mike here, and I am joined by Steven, and we are really excited over today's topic. This is something that everyone who runs PPC campaigns should be thinking about, which is auditing your own campaigns. What's going on, Steven?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Yeah, that's exactly right. We get a ton of people writing in all the time, asking for advice, help, and a lot of times, we're more than happy to actually look at someone's campaigns and provide feedback. Just anything that we would do as if it was our own account. But we're only we're a small team, and even if you get a campaign audit from us, every couple of months, this is really something that you should be doing, on a weekly, monthly, sometimes even a daily basis. So we just wanted to give you kind of some strategies for how to kind of perform a self-audit.
That's right. We're going to be covering 5 key areas that we need to be thinking about when thinking about campaign performance. So I think this is a really interesting topic because a lot of people will sort of see the revenue, see the spend, see the ACoS, and then sort of be at a loss about what to actually do. Like, where do I actually look? What do I actually focus on? I'm clicking on things, I'm looking at things. And I think it's even common for people with experience to get a little lost in the weeds. I think the saying is, you can't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's right. So today we hope to zoom out, get the drone shot, and give you the bird's eye view of your account and really talk about the key areas that you need when thinking about your campaign performance. And I'll be honest, as a quick aside, auditing campaigns, no joke, is probably one of my favorite things to do. Like, whenever you get a new account, it's like fresh, it's new, you've never seen it before, and you sort of get to crack it open and then see how all the pieces fit together. Like, who was managing this? What were they thinking? It's kind of like you get to play detective a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be like archaeology. You just get to a new undiscovered site and you're trying to put the pieces together.
That's it.
Figure out the story that was going on, see what was working, see what wasn't.
No doubt. So 5 key areas. Area number 1, got to check the temperature. Steven, what do we mean by checking the temperature of an account when you first open it up?
Yeah, the most important thing is to just kind of gauge where everything is at. Look at your most important metrics, your KPIs, before you actually get into the more granular details of your whole account. What is the overall account's performance like?
Right. Every account is going to have different KPIs. Some people might have different ACoS targets than others. Some people might have different margins. So they're, maybe they have a super low ACoS threshold, or maybe they're going really aggressive and they have a really high ACoS threshold. First, just sort of checking the temperature, seeing if things are sort of all right, because that'll help influence everything else that you see. If you look at an account and maybe the CPC is high or low, that's a very relative term. So just sort of looking at the account, opening it up, and just sort of looking at some of these metrics to help clue us in as to what kind of account this is. So, one of the first things I look at is CPCs. What is the average CPC in this account? Where does it compare to sort of the average CPC on Amazon? And then, of course, asking ourselves sort of, does it make sense? Is the CPC around $1, or are we getting clicks for maybe 20 cents, or maybe our clicks are coming in for $3? So some pretty interesting things there that you can sort of glean from just seeing what the average CPCs are.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of information that CPCs can tell you about your niche. So if your CPCs are really high, then because Amazon is an auction, if your CPCs are $5 and you're bidding $5, that means other people are also bidding $5.
Right.
If the next closest bidder was bidding $1, you'd only pay $1.01. So, higher CPCs definitely tell you that it's a more competitive place. A lot of times maybe those products that are bidding on those keywords, they have higher profit margins, or the products that go for over $500 or $1,000. But sometimes, I've seen accounts where CPCs are around 10 cents because
right.
the margins are just so tight.
Exactly. And then moving into conversion rates, the average conversion rate. And of course, there's a problem with averages because different industries are going to have different averages within that industry. But seeing where the conversion rate stacks up, typically the lower the price, the higher conversion rate you need. The more expensive the product, you can get away with sort of lower conversion rates. So sort of taking the first few things that we talked about, the CPCs, the the average order value of all the products, and then putting that with conversion rate, you're able to sort of say like, hey, if CPCs are rolling in very expensive and the conversion rate's very low, you know that there's people out there paying those CPCs and probably doing it profitably. So it can help clue you in to potentially any sort of product market fit issues right off the bat, which is pretty interesting. I think in general, the larger the account, the higher the conversion rate. Just because in order to scale an account, you do need really strong product market fit. So seeing how the cost per click and the average order value correspond just sort of helps you check the temperature. Again, in this first area, we're just trying to orient ourselves to see how the area is set up, see how the arena is set up. X-Men is out. Do you know what the danger room is?
No.
You've never seen X-Men?
No, I'm sorry. I'm out of the cultural, societal fit there.
The danger room is where you go in and it's completely empty and blank, and then like it'll transform into like a post-apocalyptic, and there's huge sentinels walking around shooting at you, and your first thing to do is just to see where you're at, see what the conditions are, and then you know whether to run or attack or whatever it might be. So all of these preliminary steps are just trying to see where the sentinels are. Do you know what a sentinel is from X-Men?
No, but in normal.
Okay. Okay. So CPCs, conversion rate, sort of average order value. Let's jump into ACoS. This relates back to the sort of company's goals of what do they want their ACoS to be? What do they need their ACoS to be? What are we up against? How steep is the challenge? Are we trying to scale an account? Is the ACoS so low and they're trying to scale it? That gives us some room to maybe bid a little bit more aggressively. Is the ACoS way too high? Is the ACoS so high that it's unprofitable? So we need to look for ways to sort of scale down the spend to get cheaper clicks to balance out that revenue. So looking at your ACoS targets is very, very helpful here too.
Yeah, and the ACoS targets, we usually see ACoS falling around the 30 to 40% range. But like Mike was saying, that's really all up to what your goals are. I've seen some people who are targeting over 100% ACoS because they're just trying to generate reviews as fast as possible.
Right.
I've seen other people who, 10% ACoS is actually breaking even for them. So you got to be super conservative. But the next biggest metric that you want to keep track of is what's your spend per day. So Mike, what's that look like?
So when we first open an account, we want to monitor spend per day and observe it to just sort of see what kind of account is it. Is it an account where every day there's going to be a month's worth of data? If somebody's spending $30,000 a month versus somebody who's spending $1,000 a month, that's 30 times more data rolling in. So every single day you have a mountain more of data. So it really just helps you pinpoint at what time ranges should we be looking at. If we're spending loads and loads and loads and loads and loads a day, I'm talking thousands of dollars a day, that's going to allow us to maybe look at a shorter time window and still have good data confidence when we do the rest of our audit. Because the thing that you don't want to happen here is you don't want to be looking at the past 30 days worth of data, but you only have spent $45, because you're everything you would see with just $45 in spend is going to be so statistically insignificant that you just want to be sure, is the data that I'm looking at throughout my audit going to be statistically relevant? And looking at the time frames is exactly the next point on our list. It's really helpful to look at 90, 60, 30, 14, maybe even 7-day metrics to look for trends. And Stephen, when you audit an account, let's say an account is trending in the wrong direction, so it's getting worse over time versus one that's maybe getting better over time. What does that mean to you for the rest of the audit?
Yeah, I get a lot of people actually writing in about that. So I love taking a look at it, and just like you said, you want to compare, your longer time frames to your shorter time frames, and see if what's going on, if your ACoS is starting to rise, if sales are starting to drop. And the two things that I normally look for are, if sales are dropping off, is the problem a drop in impressions? A drop in clicks, or is it a drop in conversion rates?
Right.
So if it's a drop in impressions or clicks, then that means your keywords aren't performing as well as they used to. Maybe people are outbidding you. Maybe Amazon did like an algorithm update, which always kind of messes up people's PPC campaigns. But if you're seeing conversion rates that are dropping, that you're getting the same amount of impressions and clicks, only fewer purchases, then that kind of tells me that your niche is getting more competitive. People are actually placing ads on your product listings and targeting your ASINs and stealing the market share. So to me, I would say you definitely want to go and check out who are your competitors and how can you compete with them, whether that's getting more reviews, optimizing your images, stuff like that.
And the last point in area 1, where we're just sort of checking the temperature, we're trying to gauge everything, is actually like, how is the owner of the company thinking about the campaigns? What are the sort of the thoughts and feelings that go into it? And the reason I put this on this list was really so much. I think it's a myth that paid traffic is only numbers based. It's only CPCs, conversion rates, ACoS, spend, trends, metrics. I think a lot of PPC and how the management works is actually the company owner or whoever's in charge of the metrics, maybe the digital marketing manager, the Amazon manager, whoever it might be. If they are flagrantly upset, for example, the ACoS is way out of their range, or maybe it's even 2 points out of their range, but it's very imperative to get it back immediately, that's going to influence the rest of what it is that you do, versus the perspective of, hey, PPC takes time. We're going to move a little bit slower, more intentional. We'd rather sort of like the strategy of like, we're going to ready, fire, aim versus ready, aim, fire type thing. It helps you understand, is the red light on? Is the yellow light on? In terms of like intensity, is like a DEFCON 3 or a DEFCON 1. And I think, feel free to correct me out there, listeners, I think the lower the DEFCON, the more intense the warning. Is that right?
Yeah, I probably agree with you on
right.
that one. These things do take time, especially with auto campaigns, which use a machine learning based algorithm. So yeah,
it's going to let you know, like if everything's on fire, do you need to just wholesale turn things off, or do you have time? Or if everything's sort of okay, you have some breathing room, then maybe you just want to bid optimize it and work your way that way. So it really helps you understand, to what intensity do I need to approach all these new areas that I'm going to get into, which brings us to area 2.
The second area we're going to be looking at is campaign structure. And man, Michael, I can't tell you how many times I look at an account that's struggling, ACoS in the hundreds, and I look at the campaign setup and everything's a mess. And that's just obviously the most important thing that affects everything. It's like just putting your shoes on backwards if that's not
right. That's good. So honestly, I think this is one of the most nuanced pieces of the digital marketing puzzle. How do I structure campaigns? I think it's really interesting, and you have to be a paid traffic professional to really get the nuance. You really need to be looking at a lot of campaigns. I know a lot of super smart, talented, savvy digital marketers that are incredible at setting up funnels and doing SEO and all these different things. And then they go and they create, they've only seen one paid traffic account. It's theirs. And there's just some weird nuances of paid traffic accounts that should be clearer. They're just not. So basically, what I mean by this is a logical hierarchy of products into their campaigns, into their ad groups, into the targeting type, all of those things. There's like a definite right way and definite wrong way. And it's probably a spectrum. So there's very, very good ways to set up campaigns. And then there's very, very bad ways to set up campaigns. So we're going to touch on some of these simple things that actually make campaign setup a lot easier. The first and easiest, and we've talked about it on the show before, naming campaigns properly. Having a good campaign ad group naming system, like it writes itself. Like if you have good campaign and ad group naming systems, the rest of your structure is going to just jump out at you. And we've talked about this on the show before. One of our episodes, go to adbadger.com/podcast to get all of the episodes. But there's an episode on campaign naming. We'll put it in the show notes. And basically what it means is you want to know what the things you're advertising in the campaign. So you should have the product category or the product. Then you need the target ACoS in there. So every time you look at it, you know whether it's up or whether it's above or below your target ACoS. You want to put some kind of targeting information in it so you know what kind of campaign it is. And putting that targeting information in there makes your life a lot easier, because the next thing we're about to talk about is you need a blend of targeting techniques in your campaigns. Stephen, touch a little bit about the targeting mixes here.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is always, creating new types of targeting campaigns, and we're only going to get more. But there's, first of all, it breaks down from automatic campaigns to manual campaigns. And then your manual campaigns, you can either be targeting keywords, you can be targeting individual ASINs, you can be targeting categories, refining that targeting with product attribute targeting, running sponsored brand ads. And, if you just throw in the name in your actual campaign name, what that campaign is targeting, man, it makes it so much easier once you're, if you're looking at a keyword that came from a certain campaign in like a search term report, you don't always remember, what was that campaign again? Was that targeting, was it automatic? Was it manual?
Right. And also think about using portfolios. Stephen, I was looking at an account that you are actually managing. I got to give you some props right here on the show. The way that you were setting up your portfolios was brilliant. Like, you had portfolios for auto. You click on that portfolio, boom, there are all your auto campaigns. You click on the portfolio for manual keyword targeting, boom, there was everything. It made life so much easier. So campaign naming, just thinking about that, it's definitely something that makes the rest of your life easier. Also worth saying here that campaign structure also applies to the amount of products and the category setup too. So being sure that you're intentional about how you're setting up your products into their ad groups is important.
Yeah, and then the next thing that I'll do is, just to kind of get the most important data as fast as I can in front of my eyes to make the quickest, most important adjustments to my account, is I will sort all of the campaigns by the ones by highest spend, highest revenue, and highest ACoS. We'll do those three individually. The reason why I start off with highest spend is because, really all those three metrics.
Right.
But those campaigns are the movers and shakers. So if you're trying to improve your overall account's, performance and lower your whole account's ACoS, well, if you can, make some impact on the campaign that's spending the most money, like $6,000 a month, rather than the one that's spending $10 a month, you're going to see a much bigger impact there. So I also start by sorting high ACoS, high spend. That gives me an idea of what are the campaigns that are in the ICU that need attention right away. And then I'll look at ones that have the highest revenue. The highest revenue generating campaigns, if they're on a low ACoS, below the target ACoS, then man, that means there's so much more opportunity that we're missing out on. So I'll usually start with those three.
That's right. Here's one thing that not a lot of people think about: dealing with the lost data phenomenon of Amazon advertising. Inside Google Ads, I can pull up a keyword search term report from 3 years ago. No issue with that data ever escaping. However, with Amazon, if you want to go back and look up a search term report from 3 years ago, you are out of luck unless you requested it back then. There's a time frame at which you can request deeper data into your account, and really getting into the habit of requesting data is a good practice. You need to do it. And I know, I can imagine why Amazon gets rid of certain data points over time. They're probably saving out loads on server space, which is kind of crazy because I think they have AWS. Couldn't they give themselves free server space or something like that? But for some reason, you need to be sure that you're requesting those reports, because if you don't request them, you won't be able to get them back.
Yeah, search term reports, Amazon will only give you up to the last 60 days.
Which is crazy.
Max. And then here's something else that's super weird, Michael, is that even if you download a report and it's downloaded in your advertising report section, after I think a few months has passed, I think 4 or 5 months, if you try to go back and download that file again, it will say this file is no longer available.
RIP.
So,
damn.
Yeah, even if you've already downloaded it. So it's a good idea to kind of just keep a folder somewhere on your hard drive that's just, campaign reports.
Right.
And when you download them, just add the date range that's in the report, the date you downloaded it, and just save it all there so you can always access that whenever you want.
Right. Last point about campaign structure, definitely understanding intentional versus unintentional placements. Essentially what that means is an unintentional placement is sort of an auto campaign. You're not really controlling every single impression that you're appearing for, as opposed to an exact match keyword as a very intentional placement, or an ASIN target. It's a very intentional placement. You know exactly where it's going to go. And I think it's important and we'll get into this when it comes to targeting management, but it's just important to be aware of the balance, because I know if I open up an account with only unintentional targeting, that's probably an issue. They're appearing for too many things they probably don't want to appear for. And then I open up an account with only intentional targeting, so they only have exact match keywords. I know that they're probably leaving some missed opportunity for new discovery. So definitely striking the right balance is important there.
Area number 3, targeting management.
Targeting management, so we're getting deeper into the account now. We looked at it at a very high level. We then touched on structure, just how things are set up. Now we're actually inside ad groups. We're actually looking at the targeting of the product ads. And the first thing we have to mention, we mentioned on the show before, be sure there's no keyword or targeting dumping.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of times where folks will basically just take, I don't even know where they get these keywords from. I don't know if they're making them up or if they use like a reverse ASIN lookup tool, but they basically just dump, hundreds and hundreds of keywords that sometimes aren't even relevant. They just seem to put them into their ad groups, and those ad groups like never perform well.
Right. My favorite thing over the last few months, after we came out with the keyword dumping episode, sort of warning people about it, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, you were right." Like, I loved the messages that we got of people like, "What do I do? I've been keyword dumping. What do I do next?" So definitely that's something to be aware of. The other thing too, like there's this crowded ad group phenomenon. You had this cool watering hole analogy. Tell us about that. It's probably going to be better than the X-Men Danger Room.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I was just thinking, this crowded ad group phenomenon that we've seen is basically once an ad group starts to get over like 25 to 50 keywords in it, Amazon just stops serving impressions to like 70% of the keywords in that ad group. So, I was thinking about like a watering hole. If there's a bunch of animals around it, eventually it gets so crowded that, smaller animals can't get in and can't get any access to the water.
Right. This phenomenon isn't uncommon. I mean, it happens in Facebook ads too, where you launch a whole bunch of ads and then only the ones that like just started on like the first 24 hours that did the best are the only ones that will continue to get impressions thereafter. So then after a week, you'll end up with like, let's say you had 5 ads, you'll end up with the top 2 that get like 80% of the clicks, and then the rest will get very little. So that's definitely something to look out for. Really, really simple. Next thing, negative keywords. Are there negative keywords? And by the way, just for super clarity, there are campaign level negative keywords and ad group level negative keywords. It's not entirely easy to see when you're looking at campaigns what's what. So be sure, like whenever you click on a campaign, are you looking at the campaign level negatives? If you don't see anything, be sure to click through to the campaign individual ad groups so that you can see, were there negatives at the ad group level at least.
Yeah, it is kind of an inconvenient way to look around for negatives, and hopefully, someone out there one day can have a tool that maybe, I don't know, has a better way of viewing negative keywords.
I think I know of one.
But anyways, yeah, so I just want to say one last thing on that crowded ad group phenomenon. So the way you get around that is you just have to split up your keywords into like, rather than having 1,000 keywords in one ad group, you have to have like 25 keywords in 40 ad groups. Right.
You do that math on the fly right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was correct.
Let's go. Okay, next subject.
Yeah. So moving on. So the next thing is wasted spend management. So basically, you want to, when you're looking through your campaigns, you want to look at what are the keywords that have spend on them but haven't generated any orders yet, any purchases. So you can do that really easily within Campaign Manager or within a search term report. But you basically just apply a filter. I want to see everything without purchases on it. And then again, sort from highest to lowest by spend and look at what are the high spending keywords or ad groups that aren't actually earning you money.
That's right. Let's jump in to area 4, bidding management. So we've got our targets. Now every single one of those targets needs a bid. And honestly, this is kind of crazy to say, but the first thing that we look for is there any bid management actually going on? And it's unfortunate that Amazon advertising doesn't have a change history like Facebook ads or Google ads where you can actually see how many bids have been changed over a certain time frame. But you can kind of tell right away if an account has not been doing bid management. There'll be big bids for things that are very expensive and unprofitable. There'll be little bids for things that deserve bigger bids. So you can kind of tell right away if there's any bid management going on. Or, sometimes I'll see accounts that everything is like $1.
Yeah.
So
all the time, which is so unfortunate because, you'll see some keywords that are $1, 5% ACoS, not getting nearly enough clicks or impressions that they could be getting.
Right.
And so, crank that bid up and get more revenue.
That's actually in the intro of the show. Oh my gosh, every bid is exactly the same. That's right, yeah. I think I mentioned something like that. By the way, I've asked pretty regularly, what do we feel about that intro? I think people really like it. It's long. I think it's the longest podcast intro in the history of podcasts, but just hit the forward 30 seconds twice. Boom. Three times. Yeah, I hit it every time. It's 90 seconds.
It's 90 seconds.
Yeah. Whoa. It's a long one. Again, anyone out there listening, got feedback for the show, feel free to message us.
Hey, at least it's 90 seconds and not like 75,
right?
Which would make you skip too far if you hit it 3 times.
Sometimes
it's around 30 seconds.
Sometimes when I listen to podcasts, I'll do a combination. Like on Google Podcasts, it does 30 seconds ahead, and then you go, so it's like you have to do some quick math on the fly. So yeah, just bidding a lot on things that don't convert, that's an issue. This is new optimization. So, you can kind of tell if there's no bid management going on at the keyword level, you can almost assume that there's definitely no bid management going on at the new 4 auto targets, placement targets like the top of search, rest of search, product pages. So you can kind of tell. So that's often under optimized, which we talked about actually in episode 30 last week.
Yeah. And, Michael, I think it was 2 podcasts ago, you talked about your 5 predictions for Amazon PPC. And one of the things that you said was just adding more dimensions.
Right.
Every time Amazon adds a new dimension, and most recently we were talking about, like you said, placements and, adjusting your bids based on that. It just complicates the game. It's just more bids to keep an eye on. And for sure, I agree with your prediction that they'll pretty soon add bidding by mobile device,
right,
desktop device. So all that stuff is just going to complicate the game field. But hey, it's good news for us because, if we're keeping our eye on it and our competitors aren't, then that gives us an opportunity to put in more effort and win.
Right. And I think when you say us, you mean people and the members of the Badger Den, people out there listening. That's right. So we've started from a big 30,000 foot view of just sort of checking the temperature, seeing some of the metrics. Then we got in a little bit further, seeing the trends, seeing the campaign structure. Then we went into campaigns to look at the targeting and how things are being bid. And then there's just a sort of setting of just like fine tuning. Talk to us about that.
So after you've taken care of, the most important stuff, there's a lot of stuff, I guess you can almost say it's like the, almost like an 80-20 rule. So, everything we covered in those first 4 areas, that's going to be 80% of your account's performance. But if you really want to squeeze out that extra 20% of performance, just be that much better, there's a lot of places where you can fine tune those biddings. So placement settings, again, we talked about this last week. So listen on that podcast on how you can really optimize those bids. I didn't say this last time, but I saw one account that they were like 60%, like they were hitting their target ACoS on the campaign or on the account level, but 60% of their ad spend was inefficient because of the settings. So, I mean, your account may look optimized, but really 60% of it isn't.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like the problem with averages. Like the average for this campaign might be 30%, but as you dig in, you might find keywords that have 80% ACoS. And then as you dig in even further, you might have placements that are 90% ACoS. So.
And one other thing is that's for fine tuning is back in November of 2018, Amazon released auto targeting options. So your auto campaigns, you can actually, there's 4 different ways that the auto campaign will target, searches and products. And you can actually adjust the bids on those target settings. So those targeting settings are close match, loose match, complements, and substitutes. The first 2, close and loose match, and this should probably be an episode of itself at some point, but close and loose match both pertain to search terms that would be, either a close match to your product or a loose match. And then complements and substitutes are for actual product targeting. So substitutes would be like something that someone could have gotten instead of it, and complements would have been something that goes along with it.
Right.
But when I look at those, close match ACoS is usually pretty good, and loose match ACoS is usually insane, too high. It's blowing the ad spend budget there. So definitely take a look at those.
Right. And that concludes our campaign audit. Auditing campaigns is one of the most important things that any paid traffic professional, Amazon marketer should be aware of. So I'm curious, how do you out there listening, how are you guys automating? How are you guys auditing your campaigns? I've got automation on the brain, but in terms of auditing campaigns, do you guys sort of jump right in? Do you sort of take an approach like we had right here? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts out there. And Stephen, any final closing thoughts on auditing campaigns?
Well, I would just say the more you do it, the better. So keep a close eye on it. You should be doing it at least once a week. And, if you ever want us to, take a look at it, feel free to write in, send over some screenshots. We'd love to give you any feedback that we can.
Right on. And as always, you can get all of our episodes at adbadger.com/podcast. And if you'd like to hear more about our software, AdBadger, feel free to go to adbadger.com/podcast deal. Thanks, everybody.